Andrew says, I hope everyone enjoyed the long weekend. Jimmy Garoppolo isn't just a great quarterback, he's also a great American. And that leads us right into our first topic. We want to get into this before we talk about the 84 49ers. Jimmy Garoppolo should be throwing any day now if he hasn't already started throwing coming off of that shoulder surgery. What are some of your – where do you think that is going to happen with Jimmy Garoppolo? Kind of what are the things that you're thinking? Where, Sunil?
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. And before we, talk about where he's going, I think we need to, kind of talk about how we got here, right, Jack? Because I don't think most people at the end of last season really expected us to still be talking about Jimmy Garoppolo on this team this close to training camp, right? And for that reason, I think a lot of the faithful, it's split down the middle. There's guys like Andrew, who I feel like is a big proponent for Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think there's a good case to talk about why, because of clearly all the winning the 49ers have been able to do while he was the starting quarterback. And then there's another group that I tend to fit into where, it's time to just hand the keys over to Trey for better or for worse, because you've already invested so much into him. I personally think he's going to be an upgrade and be able to take this team to the next level, whether it be this year or, in the next few years here. But we are still here. And you're right. He is going to be ready to throw, and he's still on the roster. And I think there's a portion of the faithful that really looks at this as a black eye when it comes to John Lynch and this front office, that they've pretty much misplayed this. Now, you talk about when I look at it, I don't necessarily think that this is the fault, I guess, of the front office. I think this is just a lot of things happen that put us in this situation. And the first thing, and the thing that's like the most clear thing, is I think the 49ers were under the impression that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to just rehab his shoulder, and then Jimmy Garoppolo decided to get the surgery. And I think that put a real big, monkey wrench in the plans of what the 49ers were going to be able to do, because trading an injured quarterback that was rehabbing is a lot different from trying to trade a quarterback that's coming off of surgery, right? So I think that's the main thing clearly that affected it. And I think the second thing, Jack, that a lot of people, I think, don't put into consideration is a lot of quarterbacks became available that nobody really thought was available at the beginning of the offseason. Nobody thought that Russell Wilson was going to be available for a trade. So that took Denver off of the market, right? Nobody thought that Matt Ryan was going to be up for a trade. That took the Colts out of the market, right? So, when you're talking about MVP caliber quarterbacks that have won MVPs in the past, these are the type of quarterbacks that are going around. So if you could get those type of quarterbacks versus a quarterback that's coming off of surgery like Jimmy Garoppolo, you're clearly going to go with the healthier version, especially when you look at, the contract that you're going to have to accept with Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think it's important to discuss all of the reasons why we're still here. I don't know if you agree with me, if you think that this was just misplayed by the 49ers, or was it just a matter of circumstance based off of what I just, mentioned?
Well, they decided that they went into 2021 with a plan of being to go ahead, and it was basically going to be Trey Lance's year to develop, and they were going to keep Garoppolo, and it worked out for him. It worked out for him in that it got them all the way to where they had a 10-point lead in the second half of the NFC Championship game starting the fourth quarter. So in that sense, it worked out. It also worked out in that Trey Lance developed, and I think sitting on the bench helped out Trey Lance, and I think in a way it helped the 49ers out as well, because instead of him taking his lumps on Sunday, where what it could have been a struggles, he was able to do that in practice to an extent. Of course, you grow more in the games, and that's going to happen a little bit. But I think when you watch Trey Lance, from day one of training camp through week 17, which was the last time we got to see him, you saw a quarterback that improved, at least to my eyes. And in Trey Lance's own words, he was kind of swimming in things last year. His head was full of, trying to just absorb everything, because it was everything was new to him. And so would he have been able to play last year and succeeded? He might have, but I think for the 49ers, the way that they went about their business worked out to the best for the team and for Trey Lance, and I think it's going to pay dividends going forward. The only thing that really kind of hurts here is if you were going to blame him for anything, it would be Jimmy Garoppolo's injury in the playoffs. I think, at least to me, it made it really hard. I was fine with arguing that Garoppolo should be playing this season. After what I saw week 17, with the injury that he already had to his thumb, I would have been fine. I wouldn't have argued against them playing Trey Lance moving forward, even if they lost in a playoff game before the NFC Championship game. I don't think I would have ripped him as much at that point, because he had showed in week 17 that he was ready to go, at least in the second half of that game. And the injury that he sustained to his shoulder was a direct result of them playing him with that thumb injury, because instead of putting his hand down to brace himself, he just landed and took it all in his shoulder, and that's what injured it. So in a way, they can get blamed for that, but that's still a tough call on the 49ers side. And then as far as all the guys, the movements and stuff, as you said with the quarterbacks, the Russell Wilson one, I think you could have foreshadowed that happening, that he was going to move somewhere. The Matt Ryan one, not so much, but none of that mattered because Garoppolo was injured, and you're not going to trade for an injured quarterback. And I think, so from that standpoint, it was a tough deal, and I think the 49ers kind of played themselves a little bit after week 17 in the playoffs, but other than that, I think they handled it fine, and I think it's going to play dividends for them here in 2022 and beyond with what Trey Lance can do.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it was the right move to hold on to him, even though at the beginning of the season, I was a big proponent that you should have gotten rid of Jimmy then. I was wrong. I think it did work out really well as far as not only how far they went with Jimmy there, also the development of Trey, giving him a year, not putting that pressure on him. And everything, if Jimmy didn't get injured, it would have worked out even better, because I think that season, Jimmy elevated his trade value as well, because he took the 49ers again to an NFC Championship game. So I think if you look at a quarterback, just resume wise, that in the last 3 years has been to 2 NFC Championship games and 1 Super Bowl appearance, that's going to be a commodity on the trade market. Unfortunately, he decided to do the surgery, and I push back a little bit in saying that, the Russell and Matt Ryan being traded doesn't affect. I think it affects because it took away desperation from teams that would have maybe made a desperation move or taken a little more risk on a guy like Jimmy, because they really had no other option, right? More quarterbacks available takes away desperation from these teams that may have traded even if, Jimmy wasn't all the way healthy. But that leads to your question, what do I think is going to happen now? Well, the 49ers are getting bailed out a little bit because Deshaun Watson's situation is there. I think that, Coach Rule over there with Carolina is in a difficult situation for him with, he's, I think, third year, 4th year into that contract, hasn't really seen dividends. And I don't know if he's happy with going into the year with Sam Darnold as quarterback. So there still are a few teams that potentially are in need of a starting quarterback that have been linked to being interested in Jimmy Garoppolo. So that bodes well, at least for there maybe being a market for a trade. But I think the thing that holds Jimmy getting traded is just the contract, right? At this point, both of those teams, I don't know. Carolina, I think, could absorb it, but I don't know if Cleveland could absorb it. I think Carolina is close, but it would take up pretty much everything they have left. And I don't know if they want to be on the hook for $25 million of Jimmy plus the $18 million of Sam Darnold, because his contract's fully guaranteed. Same thing with Cleveland. Even though they can absorb it, that would be them paying a lot of money to 3 quarterbacks when 2 of them aren't going to be even playing, right? Because Baker Mayfield's is completely guaranteed, and Deshaun Watson's contract seems to be, fully guaranteed as well. So, yeah, for me, based off of that, Jack, even though there are some teams that are in need of a quarterback, I just feel the most likely scenario is Jimmy Garoppolo being cut. once he could pass the physical, so the 49ers don't have to pay that $7.5 million injury settlement or whatever it's called, and the team could save that $25 million, roll it into next season to sign what is going to be a lot of free agents that are, leaving on this team, or at least available specifically on this roster. So that's what I see ending up happening.
Yeah, I think that I've said it all along. I think he's going to get traded. I think he's going to get moved. I think he's going to end up in Carolina. I think that Carolina can't absorb his full contract right now. I believe. I think they have a pretty good amount of cap space, but they don't have enough to absorb all of it. I do believe that Garoppolo is going to redo his deal. There was a report that came out about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, that Jimmy Garoppolo and his group would be willing to redo his deal for a trade partner. I don't think that just came out of nowhere. I think that's because that's something that's going to have to happen. And Carolina just makes the most sense from the standpoint of they don't have a quarterback on the roster right now that can do any of the stuff, that can win games for them. At least I don't think they do. Matt Rule needs to win games, and Garoppolo should be able to help them do that more than Sam Darnold or Matt Corral. In Cleveland, they have a few more pieces. I don't think that Baker Mayfield's going to be back there either, but I think that they would probably try to get by with Jacoby Brissett since they paid him the money. I think that's the direction that they're going to go if they have the suspension to Deshaun Watson out there. So I think Garoppolo is going to be a Carolina Panther. I put that out on the Press Democrat earlier today when I did my 53-man roster for the quarterbacks. So that's what I think. It's been kind of just staring at there all off season long, really since the beginning, but even more so after the injury kind of took place and people are wondering. I think part of why people are kind of maybe backing away from a little bit now is because they think that because Garoppolo's missed the entire offseason program. But my comeback to that is Garoppolo was traded on October 30th. 5 weeks later, he started for the 49ers, won all 5 starts. And I understand that the opponents in those games are playing quarterbacks who were not very good. That was part of their benefit there. But he also beat 2 playoff teams at Levi Stadium on the way to it. I don't consider the Rams, the team that he beat, a playoff team. If you remember that Rams playoff team that they played the last week of the season, even though they're a playoff team, they're playing against their backups because they were holding everybody out because they had to play in the wild card game. So, I just as long as you get a trade for him in the next 2 to 3 weeks, that's even more time for him to get ready, learn a playbook than he got when he came to San Francisco. And everybody says how difficult Kyle Shanahan's playbook is to learn. Well, he was able to win plenty of games with it in 5 weeks. So we'll see.
But Jack, here's my only thing about that. Why, if Carolina is wanting to trade for Jimmy, why have they waited this long?
They want to see him be able to throw the ball. They want to make sure that he can throw. If he's not going to be able to throw, there's really nobody else that's on the market that could give him that. And they're not going to. I don't think they're going to have to trade what was Matt Ryan, a third?
Matt Ryan was a third, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to be giving that big of a pick to the 49ers, or it could be something that's going to be moving forward in the future.
Yeah, see, I just think that if Carolina is so gung-ho, or even Cleveland for that matter, is so gung-ho on wanting to make a trade, I mean, I would just do it now. Like, I would want to do it before or as soon as possible to get him into our organization, to get him to wherever you need to be, get him acclimated with the culture, get him rehabbing under our doctors, all that kind of stuff, to make sure everything is there if I'm going to make a trade for him, right? There's no real need to wait because, just like you said, there's no market for him. So why wait until maybe once he starts throwing, there might be a market for him at that point. So maybe now all of a sudden Cleveland is involved, or a team like Pittsburgh, or a team that sees what they have on the roster and is like, maybe we could use a guy like Jimmy, right? I don't think anybody's thinking that it's going to be more than a 4th or a 5th to get him. So if you see Jimmy throwing now, I think there'd be more teams willing to maybe give up a 5th if they see what they have on their team, saying, maybe we can't win with this, or if an injury happens, or whatever the case may be. To me, I just think that contract is what's scaring people away. And I think they're just waiting to understand that the likelihood of the 49ers going into week 1 with both Jimmy and Trey on the roster is very unlikely, just because, it would be a real tough working situation to have Jimmy back here during training camp after all the offseason talk from the coaches and the front office has been, we've been looking to trade Jimmy. So I think teams are just waiting to cut him, and I think there'll be 2 or 3 teams that are, vying for his employment, and I think that's what they're waiting for. Get him on their budget versus, having to pay $25 million for him and give up an asset.
Yeah, I just disagree with it. I just think that they're waiting to see him throw. We'll see how it works out. I think you're not going to give up something for a guy that might not be able to throw the football. So they want to see the guy be able to throw. Once he can throw, you go. The way that this thing's fallen at this point, there's only a couple of spots. It's only 3 teams that are looking for quarterbacks, realistically, right? It's Seattle. You're not going to trade with. That's highly unlikely, I should say. And Carolina and maybe Cleveland. Cleveland may become one of a player in this, depending on what happens with Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun Watson only gets there's been all kinds of different rumors that have been out there. If it's for the full season, then I think they make a trade. If it's for anything less than that, then there's no trade at all. Wouldn't even be a player. If it's like a 6 or 8 week trade or a suspension, I think they just stick with what they have and roll with it. But I think Carolina is the player here. We'll see. We'll find out, right? We're going to find out in the next 6 weeks, I think, which one of us is right and which one's wrong.
Do you feel like Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be throwing for the 49ers during training camp?
No.
So you think this happens before July 26th?
Yeah, or 27th. I think 27th will probably be the first day of practice, 27th or 28th. Yeah.
Okay. So by the end of this month, Jimmy Garoppolo will either be cut or traded.